Time management. Putting first things first. We spent a lot of time talking about the 4 quadrants. We talked about the importance of a weekly planning time. I'm going to ask you Monday if you've decided on what your weekly planning time is. I'm going to ask you again a week later. You're going to think I'm a broken record, but I can't tell you how important and how successful that can be for you. So let's talk about what I call the Fab 4 of time management. Now, when I was a kid growing up, the Fab 4 was John, Paul, George, and Ringo. But in time management, it's tasks, notes, contacts, and appointments. If any of you use Outlook and you look at the lower left-hand side and you see those 4 items there, these are the major things you have to keep up with as a student and as a professional. So now let's start to transport your mind a little bit out of just keeping up with stuff that you have to keep up with as a student and think about what it is you have to keep up with as a teacher. You might want to start calling out that stuff. What do you have?
Plans.
Lesson plans. What else?
Grading.
Grading. What else?
Field trips.
Field trips. Permission slips that go with field trips. What else?
Standards.
Standards. Yes. What else? Can I borrow it? Mm-hmm.
Textbooks.
Textbooks. What else?
How about the people?
Yes.
And as a teacher, parents and students and administrators and whoever else.
Yeah. You know, let's start with the students. Gets a little scary if you lose track of them, huh? That's not so good. And then you have all that information and things that you have to do with your colleagues, to being on work teams and collaborative teams, things that you have that your principal has asked and that the superintendent's office has asked. Oh my goodness. And are your students really good at keeping up with stuff?
No.
No. So you have to become an Uber kind of organizer, because you'll have to do reminders. You'll have to be the one to say, don't forget tomorrow. You have to keep up with lots and lots and lots of details and stuff. You'll have a lost and found in your own room, much less at the school. So, now we have to keep up with stuff. Our stuff, their stuff. Tasks. We've spent some time talking about that, haven't we? Probably best to have a master task list. I suggest you have one. And that master task list have everything on it, both for work and for home. Tasks. You need one master task list. You don't need 10 to keep up with. Because when you sit down to do planning, you've got to keep up with your life. And your life is personal and professional. You need one calendar. I don't care if it's paper or electronic, but you need one. Don't keep a separate calendar for personal and for professional. It just doesn't work. You find yourself with one and not the other, and then stuff gets just totally confused. One calendar. Prioritize your tasks. Use the Q system, the ABC system. I don't care. Use a system. Important things first. Spend your time there. A task is only a wish
Do you get specific?
Until you get specific, and it has a date and a time. Let's skip down to appointments. That's pretty much a part of your organizing. If you have to be somewhere on a certain day and a certain time, that's been pretty logical and natural to put into a calendar. But it's not always been as logical and natural to put a task in a calendar. And sometimes a task is pretty darn big, isn't it? It's like, are you going to write research paper in your calendar? I doubt it. Because you're not going to get that done probably even in a whole day. You'll have to break that into pieces. Research. Read the research. Summarize the research. Write a draft. Proofread the draft. Final paper. What was that, 6 parts? And you might even have more. Big things need to be broken into pieces. That's how you get them accomplished, one bite at a time. And they go in your calendar just like appointments do. They're tasks. You got to allocate time or it's just a wish. Then you have something called contacts. Pretty soon we're going to be talking about your resume. If you've been in the 003 class, we've already talked about that. You're going to have to come up with references. Where do you get those? Well, I hope you have some kind of a folder, paper or electronic, where you start to keep the names, addresses, emails, and snail mails, and phone numbers of the important people that you have had in your world. Teachers. Teachers you've observed, teachers you've volunteered at, agencies where you volunteered, who did you work with, what was their name, what was their title, what was the name of that organization, and what is that address. You have to have that, or you can't use them as a reference. What a loss for you. So find a place, somewhere, that you can keep up with. When you collect business cards, or even start to make it a habit to collect those cards, that you translate that into a place that you can get to when you need them. And you will need them. So now's the time to start making places to keep that stuff. You're going to see things from teachers that you've had, not just in education, but in all your classes. You should be a student of every teacher you have. Oh, I like how that person did that. Oh, look at that as a very clever thing to put on a syllabus. You should start collecting this stuff. That's how you learn. Oh, I wonder if I could take that exercise and translate it for my students. Oh, I could see how this would fit. And start to collect that. Because as a teacher, that's where you get your repertoire of really cool stuff. Where are you going to keep these ideas? Now's the time. Because the other thing as a teacher you keep up with is your tools. Yes, you use textbooks, but you know what? You use other stuff. And where are you going to keep that? I have a whole collection of leadership games. Some I've tried, have the equipment for, some I haven't tried yet. But I have them for when I want to use them in different kinds of classes, in different kinds of ways. You need the same thing. Notes. Now, as a student, you've done pretty well keeping up with notes. You have big 3-ring binders, folders, all kinds of ways that you keep up with notes. But as a professional, somehow the 3-ring binder doesn't quite make it like it does in a backpack. Not saying you might not still haul stuff in a backpack to your classroom, but chances are you're not going to carry a 3-ring binder. Chances are you're going to have something More like this. Or you're going to have some kind of a tablet, and you're going to have notes. Or maybe you have one of those fancy pens that you write and it makes electronic stuff automatically. I forget what they're called, but anyway. So and before you know it, there'll be all kinds of ways to keep up with your collection of notes. Staff meeting notes, committee meeting notes, principal meeting notes, ideas that you have for lesson plans, books that you see at conferences, notes that you take when you go to teacher conferences. How are you going to get that organized? I hope I'm not making you feel tired and overwhelmed, especially after lunch. That's not my purpose. But my purpose is, this is the time to practice your organizational skills. What works for you as a student, you can translate to the classroom. When you go to do classroom observations, look to see not just how the teacher presents, how is the classroom organized? What does he or she use to keep things where they need to be and that they can get at them? What systems do they put into place that helps them not just manage their students, but their stuff? This is the time to practice, not when you're dealing with your first job. You'll have enough to keep up with there. Practice getting organized now. Know what works for you. Is color a good thing? Hold up your notebook. Sorry, don't mean to pick on you. You know, she's got dividers by color. If color doesn't work for you, that's okay. But think of what works for you. Color happens to be a thing that works for me. Now, I don't have 65 color codes in my office, but I have set aside a certain color of folder for every student I advise. If there's a stray folder on my desk of that color, I know exactly where it needs to be. I never want to lose an advisement folder. That's critical. So I designate a color there. It's not that you have to have 10 key color codes, but a few things might not be a bad idea. I buy storage things that are clear if I can try to get those. I never buy a little case that I can't see through. I hate opening stuff up to look inside when I could just grab it. Is that in there? Yes. I just do what works for me. You have to figure out what works for you. Task notes, contacts, appointments, and your student stuff. Think about how you're going to keep that together. Learn from the teachers that you go to observe. Plan weekly. And believe you me, when you're planning as a teacher, you know you have to think about the week ahead. If you give a test, you've got to plan time to grade those tests. If you give an essay, you have to plan time to grade those. You have to plan things in sequence so that everything builds upon each other and it gets laid out in a logical fashion so that your students can learn. Teachers are the champions of planning. But it starts now with the stuff you're managing now. Get good at it now. And then it will just fall into place when you have to do even more of it on your job. Questions about that? There is a classic film called Big Rocks Planning, and I would be remiss if I did not share that with you. And we will use this to kind of close out our thoughts on habit 3 and getting your systems and planning and organization in place. The gentleman in the film is Stephen Covey. He passed away about 3 years ago in a bicycle accident in Utah. Very sad, wonderful man. I actually got to take some training from him. Phenomenal person. But this is him leading the Big Rocks scenario.
Your name is?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. You have a work life?
Yep.
Family life as well?
Mm-hmm.
Children?
Not yet.
Not yet. What's the nature of your work assignment?
I direct an international firm.
An international firm? So you really are interfacing with all kinds of people in the firm and outside the firm.
That's right.
You want a rich personal life and a rich family life. Do you ever feel like you get bogged down in the thick of thin things?
Yes.
Well, that might be analogous to all these little, small things that tend to fill our life. And they just little by little, they just accumulate. Now, your job, you can't go above this, is to get all those large rocks in the jar. Good luck. What's that one called?
Q2, planning, preparation.
Right. Planning, preparation, prevention, and empowerment. Okay, the next rock she's putting in there is called relationships and family. You can look at that third rock you put in there, that's employment, some key employment issue, and then you put major projects here, and I can't get it above there.
I haven't worked it though.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's fair. That's called service, community, church. Do you ever feel like this?
Yes.
How many feel like this? By moving the little things around, you might squeeze in one more of those big major things. It's almost, wow. You know, if it doesn't fit, force it. Here's something that's called urgent and important. It's a quadrant 1 thing that is blindsiding you, that it's your biggest client, that if you don't get back to that client now, you've given up your vacation. And you have no special block of time just for yourself. I'll tell you what you can do if you want to. You can take a whole different approach. You have a totally fresh bowl. You can work out of a different paradigm altogether.
Well, then I'd rather put these in the bottom. And then put a little pebble on top.
Employment,
Big opportunity.
big opportunity.
Important and urgent. Block of time. Those young children keep looking at me. Glad my husband's not here. Now I dump these in there.
Okay?
So what do the big rocks represent?
The important thing?
Yes. Important. Excellent. That's what's important. That's what's in habit 2. What did the green gravel represent?
Life.
Life. Stuff. Those things you label C that you should delete, delegate, or delay. What would have happened if all the green gravel didn't fit in the bowl and it spilled over? Or she just didn't pour it all in? What would have happened? Pardon? It's a way to delete, isn't it? Would the world come to an end? No. In fact, she probably shouldn't have put all that green gravel in that bowl. Big stuff goes in first before anything that resembles gravel. And truly, very little gravel. Now, I know sometimes you get caught in a hard place and you might have to pick up a little gravel along the way. Life happens. But you should be on guard to try to prevent that as much as you possibly can. Have something that you practice that says, gosh, you know, I love to volunteer, Kurt. I just do. But you know, I like to volunteer around where my skill sets are, because it gives me great joy to do that. And I know I do a great job for organizations when I do that. So if you ever have an opportunity for me to do this for your organization, I will be there in a heartbeat. But what you've asked, although important for your organization, is just not my skill set. And so I know you wouldn't want somebody who didn't do it right or who really didn't have the heart for it. And if I can think of somebody else, I will gladly send them your way. But I just can't do this right now. Is that a bad way to say no? No. Or it could be, gosh, you know, Jared, I would really love to do that. And it's one of my favorite things to do. But I have already committed this big block of time to do this project or be with my family, or that's a big priority for me, and I know you understand because you have priorities too. So I will have to say no this time, but would you please ask again? Is that a bad way to say no? You have already said in habit 2 what's important to you. That's the fire in your belly. That's what makes you get up in the morning. And that's what causes you to have stress when your time goes away. When you get to the end of the week and you go, oh, I didn't get anything done. Oh, what a lousy week this was. That's how you feel when A, you didn't spend your time the way you had wanted to. You didn't say no to the things you should have said no to. And those key roles that you wrote down, when you didn't get to spend time in all 7 of those key roles, you feel lousy. So I'm going to give you one other key question that I want you to add to your planning process. Something that will help you not feel bad at the end of the week. And the question is this: what is the one thing I can do this week to achieve my role and my goal? That's it. What is the one thing I can do this week to help achieve my role and my goal? Just one. Maybe your goal is that research paper. And I'm going to do one thing. And I've already broken it down into a list of 6 or 8 things. And so the research paper sits here, and a done research paper sits here. So at the end of week 1, I move it to here. Well, it's better than it's sitting back here, isn't it? You can at least say, I got one thing done. Maybe you haven't seen your best friend for the longest time or even had a phone conversation. And you feel bad. But if you did your planning and you scheduled some time with that friend, either by phone or in person, you've pushed that relationship back forward again, haven't you? And at the end of that week, you went, I did something in that role this week. I did a good thing. That's the emotional side of what happens with poor planning. When you feel lousy. When you haven't done one thing in each of your key roles, at least one. Surely you can make that happen.